a huge change that I saw at the time was in the way they're socializing. For example, students in year 4 or year 5 started making their own arrangements and going for walks with friends or running around town a little bit, because what else were they meant to do? And the same thing happened with the teenagers coming into high school. A lot of the socializing, as it had to be, was done through phones. Social media has been created by the smartest people in the world to be the most addictive thing. That's how it's made, and they've definitely done a good job at that. What I'm seeing the most of, probably across the board, is the children having too much control and power, and parents being scared of their children and giving in and being really scared to put in consequences or boundaries. We don't want military homes. We don't want horrible homes filled with rules and really authoritative, but I truly believe that children feel safer when there are boundaries put in place, and I'm seeing a mismatch between that.
Hello and welcome to This Complex Life. Today I have with me psychologist Jamie Maserow, and we are talking about young people, and not just in general, but what's happening for young people now post-lockdown, post-COVID. For those in Melbourne, you'll know that we had some really difficult lockdowns that went for months and months and months over a couple of years. And people ask us, what's the impact? What's happening? So we're going to talk all about that today. So welcome to the conversation, Jamie.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Are we failing young people? I'm just going to come right out and ask it, like, are we getting it wrong? And by we, all adults in their lives, not just therapists.
I don't think as people in their lives we're failing them, like as therapists or adults or parents or teachers. But I think more broadly, society and the way we're working and the way our life is working is failing young people. What do you think?
I haven't read the book, The Myth of Normal, in its entirety, but that's just the bit that comes to mind is the work of Gabor Mate kind of really saying how we're living, how we're doing things. Yeah. It's failing all of us.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, in a way, yes.
And I guess that's what I meant in a way. Like, I don't think people in particular, there's any certain group of people that are failing the young people in our world, but the overarching way society's working is failing all of us and including them, which is so sad.
If we try and think about it more post-COVID, for me that life is like there's like before and after, and there's so much that has changed around our digital accessibility, education, expectations, workplaces. When we look at those particular changes, whether it's the impact of the remote education, remote everything, and the new embracing of technology, how does their world look different? Like, what are you seeing?
I guess from a clinical perspective, I'm seeing, and I guess even now we're a little bit more removed from the lockdowns, like they finished in 2021 and we're in 2025. But over the years, I've seen different parts of the young people's lives quite majorly affected, but it's been dependent on their age groups. So I think the main areas for the younger ones, I had a lot of referrals coming through for cognitive assessments the one year following COVID. I can't remember exactly which year it was. And I had a few assessments from that same age group. Let's say they were year 3, but when we did the background history for these little kids, their prep and year 1 were in lockdowns, and that's the fundamental building blocks of their learning, where they learn the ABC, they learn to read, and they learn maths. And I think that definitely has impacted them.
Yeah, we noticed that as well. I work mostly with high school age and above. A lot more assessment requests for autism, ADHD in particular. We don't offer cognitive assessments at the moment. Some because perhaps they missed those milestones or those opportunities, but some also maybe had a parent be able to observe how they study, their literacy, their numeracy, the quality of their work.
Absolutely. And especially with ADHD inattentive subtype, which isn't hyperactivity when they're hyper and running around the house, but it's the difficulties of concentrating and attending to what they're learning. When they were expected to sit down and learn remotely, big problems came up and were noticed, like you said, by the parents who hadn't seen things, or even teachers, because inattention, being an internal process, can often get missed, and it came up a lot in that time, didn't it?
Yeah. And it was hard to distinguish that from the experience of like the distress that came with the lockdown. So for some people, it might have felt like a trauma. And for a lot of people, it was just heightened levels of distress. I mean, you know, we can take ourselves back to everything was scary, going to the supermarket, fighting over toilet paper, rules around masks, what you could do, what you couldn't do. So there was a heightened level of anxiety and distress. And that can sometimes present as symptoms of neurodivergence or mental ill health. And so it was actually really hard to separate. The context was so new. It's nothing like we've ever had before to use these psychometric testing on a population that was experiencing a collective trauma in this way.
Absolutely. And even in offering support, like counselling, not even the assessment, moving it to Zoom. Like now it feels so normal, right? Doing this, you know, this over our chat through the computer is like so fine and normal. But do you remember going back to starting like the first kind of Zoom counselling sessions that we were required to do?
Oh, I do. And I remember trying to create it as natural as possible. So I had like a stand that I tried to put my iPad on so that I could still sit in a chair so I could still talk. But then I was like, where do I look? Am I looking at them? Am I looking at me? If I just look at the camera, do I have two screens? Oh my God, the dog needs to go and wee. What do I do?
It makes me feel so much better that you had all those things, because so did I. Specifically where to look when you're doing a Zoom. What argument? It was so new to everyone, right? And like what you said, with it being new to adults and scary on a whole societal level, imagine what it was like for these kids or teenagers.
Yeah, I found my teens adapted a little better to digital therapy.
Yeah.
Working with kids was really, really hard because often a lot of the things we use is play and games, and all we could do was art. So I did send out packs of like colouring paper and we tried to replicate some of that, but it really required the parents to set everything up, tilt the camera down. Like, how do we do art and instructions and play games and have fun and learn? Like, it was actually really challenging. So even those who reached out for support, there was a limit to how much how effective that felt at times.
Absolutely. It was. It's with young kids. Even now I sometimes get requests to do Zoom appointments. I don't like doing it with young kids. I don't think it's not right for me as a psych in the way I like to work.
Yeah, same.
I think teenagers can manage it a bit, like you said, better, or adolescents totally, you know, when we go up there, or, you know, some clients in their 20s can, but younger I don't think it's right for.
If we come back to kind of, we were talking about if we're failing young people and their world, it has changed. I mean, every generation has its changes, but something's felt like they were turbocharged. Like some of the changes that came through the lockdowns, it felt like there was like an acceleration of certain things. What are the trends that you're noticing around the different world that they're navigating right now?
Well, the one thing is linked to, there's two parts of it. A huge change that I saw at the time was in the way they're socializing. And you can see it in, again, depending on the different age groups. Like I think, for example, students in year 4 or year 5, which I think is still quite young, started making their own arrangements and going for walks with friends or running around town a little bit, because what else were they meant to do? And I'm like, that's really young, so they got their independence, what I observed a little bit earlier. And the same thing happened. Well, it's a little bit different, but with the teenagers coming into high school, a lot of the socializing, as it had to be, was done through phones. Brings us to the big social media kind of. But if we just talk about socializing and through phones, like what I would hear is if students went to bed at a decent hour, that, some WhatsApp groups would be writing messages until, 3 or 4 in the morning, and they're young, even though they don't think they're young when they're teenagers. And that has huge impacts too.
I had some, less so of the ones reaching independence early. I had a lot who it almost paused things for them, especially if they went to schools out of the area and their peers lived too far away. And perhaps, maybe if they went to an independent or private school, they didn't have people walking distance. And so a lot of my clients as well are neurodivergent. So socializing was hard if it wasn't around a shared hobby or interest. And they almost had this gap of interaction.
Yeah. And it's hard to generalize, say one thing means one thing, because you've just reminded me, some of the kids that I work with, let's say on the autism spectrum disorder, they thrived and they loved every bit of COVID and lockdown and remote learning. I got some emails from mum saying, they're doing so well, we're going to stop therapy now, which is so nice that they could do well because they could live in the way that was easier for them, I guess. So there were both parts to it as well.
Yeah. If we think in general terms, how has it impacted their health, mental health, physical health? Like, what are you sort of noticing in the folk you work with?
I think mental health is declining overall in the young people. And it started, I don't know exactly when it started. There is all this research. I guess we're talking a little bit about COVID. There were articles and it was in the news that child psychs were so busy, right? And therapists and mental health workers. And then it was coming up in the media, but I was seeing it in the practice where I worked in real life. From then, the referrals and the wait list got so busy and we were sort of waiting for it to die down. And I don't know if it has, which is sad to me.
I find it hard to quantify that because in a way, I see more education around the terminology and how to talk about mental health and value mental health and breaking the stigma in mental health support. So there is this increased literacy.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a negative way where terminology might be misunderstood and used as a way to avoid certain things, like feeling anxious doesn't mean an anxiety disorder.
Yes.
So there's some of that stuff happening. And at the same time, there was an increased distress, but for the whole system. And being a family therapist as well, I think about sometimes young people are put into a position or a role of if only they could get fixed, everyone else would be fine, and realize that they don't have that control, they don't have that power. They're influenced by what's happening around them, and that could be parent stress, financial pressure. Parent physical health, parent separation, like there's stuff happening that could be manifesting in distress, anxiety, depression. And sometimes young people are kind of, if you can just fix them, it's like we can't always do that. It's a whole system, a family, a broader system happening outside of that. And lockdown did put people one on top of the other.
Wasn't easy, was it? And I think, with just fixing them, I don't love that sort of attitude in a way, but I understand it as well when it is so difficult.
Yeah, it is. It's really tricky. And I think families sometimes don't know what to do and things feel quieter now, but I think that's not because of the need. I think it's the financial challenges that people are facing in accessing support.
Which is so sad too. And the way you even, like I know for psychology, in COVID, they changed it to 20 mental health care plan sessions per year. You had an extra 10 COVID sessions, and that didn't last. I think it was there for 2 years, and then it got retracted back to 10, and that makes it difficult too.
Absolutely.
The one thing that I was just thinking about, though, in terms of our young people and the impacts from the lockdowns and socializing, they got really good then, I think, at communicating online, or really bad. I don't know which way it is, because that was the way they could communicate with each other. I've seen like a lot of like really horrible bullying kind of situations come up, but more through the phone than in real life. So I try to teach, if you're going to send a message on your phone, be prepared for it to be up on a billboard for the world to see. And if you're comfortable with that, then send it. Have you seen impacts around the socializing in that way at all? That's
felt like a gradual increase from when I was at school. I think it's just the accessibility. Like it started off in, what did we have? The different chat functions we had, and slowly
MSN.
Yeah, it really did. But that's adults are doing that too.
Yeah.
Every time I see a news article on various social media platforms, there's always someone commenting something really nasty or really negative or very biased or very one-sided. We see politicians speak atrociously about each other. They don't have very great role models for that. And so we can't blame the device. Yes, the device can make it easier to feel like you've got anonymity, like you might not walk up to someone face to face and say the nasty things you say, but there seems to be less awareness of the real person on the other side of that. But I don't think that's limited to young people.
No, I don't think it's definitely not limited to young people, but I also don't know if young people can comprehend as much, like adults, you would hope, would more understand the impact of what they're going to say may have. Maybe they don't choose not to think about it, but the kids or the teenagers even, I don't know that they all have that maturity yet. Or do you think?
No, the maturity's one, but I don't know if any of us know how to cope with that. Like, especially, and I think of some of the female entrepreneurs that I might follow, or people that post things that are maybe pushing a particular perspective that other people don't agree with. Those comments, it might not be one person consistently bullying them, but they do get comment after comment after comment of insults, of threats, of things that are actually really intimidating. And when you're on the receiving end of that, I don't think maturity really helps change. Is that actually a real threat? Is that person going to do something? How do we know that, that just go kill yourself when they just kind of put it as JKYS? Like, how do we know that that's just like a flippant thing, or is that a really aggressive? Like, I don't know as a community if we have enough awareness of that and an avenue to follow that up with a formal investigation process. Because if someone came up to you and said some of those things that you see, even on more professional platforms like LinkedIn, like if you went up to someone and said that to them in person, it would be almost assault.
So horrible, hey? And that's where my idea, not my idea, what I said at the start in a way, like, are we all failing?
Probably.
But I don't know.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. And I think about the use of technology, and social media just feels like a really big one. And I wonder if that's going to be something we look back on and think, just like we look back and think, how did we ever not wear seatbelts? I wonder if we'll look back on something we're doing now about social media and think, how did we let this happen?
And that was one of the sort of the ideas. What do you think about the use of social media and the impacts it's had on the young people?
It's really hard. I'm a big believer in sort of having autonomy, and I like the idea of some young people having access to groups and support services and advocacy that can come through social media. And then there are young people that I've worked with or I've known who could be 2 blocks away from one of their friends and they're chatting digitally instead of hanging out at their house. And so I don't think we can blame social media for every wrongdoing. There are other cultural shifts that have happened that mean we're not seeing, like I think I remember seeing an article from a emergency doctor or pediatrician. It was someone in the medical field sort of saying, where are all the broken bones? Like kids aren't playing and taking risks, and that's part of building resilience. And that could be a parenting strategy, could be communities don't feel safe. It could be that it's easier to play games or communicate on social media in a way that has been created to keep you on there longer.
That's it.
To give you that dopamine rush. And so there's a lot of, it's not simple. Anyone who tries to say it's a simple fix, it's not possible.
No, it's definitely not possible, and it's so ingrained in the way we live. But I explain to more parents sometimes that, and I think about it for myself, right? Social media has been created by the smartest people in the world to be the most addictive thing. That's how it's made, and they've definitely done a good job at that.
One of the, as we're talking about kind of getting out and about, one of the things I see parents often say is like, why don't you just do X, Y, Z? Or you don't know what boredom is, go figure it out. Like, you know, they're trying to just say these things. And I think teenagers get misunderstood. Like, I know they are pushing parents away. They're wanting more autonomy and independence, but they don't want to be just completely left to their own devices. So there is such a difference saying, why don't you just go for a run? I mean, I don't even want to do that. It's very different saying, let's go do this together. Let's go have a hit of tennis. Let's go for a bike ride. Like making it fun and engaging and doing with them. It's such a big difference. And that seems to be missing for a lot of folk.
It's the connection, like just the family unit kind of connection. I even did a post I was interested in, or a poll asking people, do you have dinner together as a family? And it's something I feel very lucky that I grew up doing not every night, you know, especially as you become a bit older and teenagers, you get busier, but it was the norm in my household. I don't know if it's the norm anymore or not, but that connection time and the time you can spend together, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, I don't know the quote. I didn't make up the quote. It's definitely come from somewhere else, but I often tell parents it's connection over correction. It doesn't mean that there can't be consequences. It doesn't mean that there are no boundaries. But in those moments, it's connection first.
I so agree with that. When, you know, even when teenagers are pushing parents away, which they do, and I'm not saying it's easy to parent teenagers, but what I try to suggest is come back to them stronger with love. They go into their room and shut their door, go in and just sit with them and just be with them. But with the, I don't know if it's shame or embarrassment or being a bit too cool, I couldn't imagine a teenager coming out and saying, oh, mum or dad, will you come sit with me? They won't. But it's mum or dad's maybe job or, you know, responsibility to go. And I think just that connection and love and time can be so helpful for the young people.
Because I can picture it. I mean, let's play out a scenario. If I was the teen, or the teen sort of saying, Mum, I want pink hair. I want to dye my hair pink. The response might be, don't be ridiculous. You can't do that. What's your school going to say? Or they could say, you want pink hair? Yeah, all my friends are getting pink hair. Are you going to follow what all your friends are doing? If they jumped off a bridge, would you jump too? Right? I've been on the receiving end of these and I've witnessed them. Or they could say, so all your friends are doing it, you know, active listening. Yeah, and I really want to fit in. Oh, sounds like you're having trouble fitting in. And then a whole other conversation emerges that's got nothing to do with pink hair.
Yeah.
But that gets missed all the time because it's the correction first. That's against the rules. Absolutely no way. Or very permissive parents. Absolutely. Let's go get pink hair straight away. How cool. I'll do it too. And I'm seeing both of those extremes in huge amounts.
And finding the balance, I think, is the best way. But it's hard.
It is. In your observations and your experience, what do parents sometimes get wrong when they're trying to support their young people?
What I'm seeing the most of, probably across the board, is the children having too much control and power in the homes, and parents being scared of their children and giving in and being really scared to put in consequences or boundaries. You know, my first sort of saying is, we don't want military homes. We don't want horrible homes filled with rules and really authoritative, but I truly believe that children feel safer when there are boundaries put in place, and I'm seeing a mismatch between that.
Yeah, I see that too. And it's around that consistency and care, and that doesn't have to be permissive. Exactly. When I run parenting workshops, we talk about that a lot, of having empathy doesn't mean you agree. You know, if they've come home and said, you know, I had a big grumpy day, it's like, what happened? I got a detention. Often the instinct is, what did you do wrong? But, you know, having empathy can be, you must be disappointed. You had, football training and you missed it. Yeah. Okay, what happened? Oh, the teacher said, and the next person to speak out of line gets a detention, and I was just laughing with my friend. And parents often go to, well, the teacher was right. You shouldn't have been talking. Or, how dare that teacher pick on you unfairly? And again, it's okay to say, that's annoying. You were just having fun. Empathizing doesn't mean you agree that what they did was appropriate or okay, or that there shouldn't be a consequence. It's actually just saying, I get that you're disappointed. And then it might be you follow that up with, well, you know, the rules, the teacher gave you a detention, you've missed out on whatever. That felt like a fair enough punishment. I don't think we need to do anything else. You've already been, we're respecting that. So, and people really struggle with this because they think if I say you must be disappointed, that I'm saying that behavior was okay. Mm. And it's not the case.
No, it's validating how they feel and then explaining, that this might happen if you laugh, even if it's annoying. Going too much to the other side is when parents are saying, oh, well, that teacher's ridiculous. You shouldn't have got a detention. That's not fair. And then fight for their kid, talk to the teacher, take it further. And it's like, if we don't teach children or young people, they don't get resilience. Life is going to teach them at the end of the day. So sometimes having a punishment or consequence is actually okay.
Yeah. And what I want parents to take away from that is that you'll be there for them even when shit hits the fan.
Yes.
That
exactly.
There can be a consequence, but that doesn't mean you withdraw love. That doesn't mean you withdraw care.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, if they've been grounded, that doesn't mean you still can't have fun with them. It doesn't mean you can't have an Uno marathon or play Jenga, or like if devices have been removed, it's not rewarding bad behavior to connect with them. It's actually building a foundation for them to come back to you in the future when shit hits the fan.
And that's what you want, right? That's what you want in the units as parents and kids, to even know there's a certain element of safety. If I do the naughtiest thing in the world, I can still go tell my parents. I might get in trouble, but they will still love me.
Yeah, and I think the fear is it's going to permit them rather than they will make mistakes. They will make mistakes. They will mess up. There might be a boundary or a consequence in place, and I will still love you.
Absolutely.
So if parents are listening and they're like, okay, I can try and take this on board, but my kid still needs a bit of extra help. They're really struggling and I don't know what to do. What's the best thing a parent or, caring auntie, uncle, or as Maggie Dent calls it, lighthouses, a responsible adult in their life, what can those people do if they're living with, working with, caring for a young person who's struggling but doesn't want help?
I think we've covered it already in a way, the connection and the time with them and just being with them, maybe not necessarily talking about it. Sometimes they don't want to talk, just showing that care and that love. You would know this too, Marie. When it's behavioral and it's young kids, it's a different story. But if it's a teenager who really doesn't want to talk, forcing them to go to therapy or psychology isn't always the right approach. And sometimes it can actually be more detrimental. They can be more untrusting and less likely to engage in the future. But when they are struggling, I think being there with them, that the connection and the time is the best. What do you think?
I had one young person many years ago who did something at school, got punished for it, and then had to see me as punishment. And it was like, you will see a therapist for X many sessions before the privileges get returned. And that was awful. And I think mum was desperate, was really hypervigilant, very nervous, trying to do everything right. But that came at the cost of their relationship, which meant he probably wasn't going to talk to her in the future. He didn't feel trusted. He thought I was aligned with her because she made the referral. And that's very different to saying, hey, I'm worried. I'm not sure what to do. Could you just humor me and have a couple of sessions with someone totally confidential? Let's just see how it goes. Like forcing that. I mean, and I see it, I work a lot with couples and it sort of comes full circle because what I see done for children and teens are the skills that are lacking in the couples that I work with, and they were parented that way. And so it's this back and forth between the overlap of those skills missing, of actually being able to say, it's not like you will go to couples therapy, I'll break up with you. It's very different saying, I'm struggling. I think we need to work on this. I'd like to go so I can have some help communicating in a way that's more effective.
It's probably the exact same, like forcing a teenager or adolescent to therapy or your partner.
You get more resistance, right? They dig their heels in, or they go in and think, well, I can prove you wrong here. And they'll be more resistant rather than having a little bit open.
Yeah.
And it's really unpleasant for us.
Well, that's it. That's it.
Please don't do it. We don't like this.
No, we don't want to be punishment. I've even over the years, sometimes when parents, if a bad thing happens at home, they're like, we're discussing this with Jamie. And the first thing I try and make really clear, even in those sessions, or to the parents privately, is like the kids I see, they're never going to be in trouble with me. I can go through different ways of managing situations better or making a better choice in the next time. Or telling them sometimes if I do think it's wrong, but they're not in trouble with me. And you really don't want parents to frame it, oh, this happened, we're going to Jamie. It's not good that, it doesn't help our work, does it?
No. And if anything, it's the parents that are really valuable to bring in there and say, what makes this hard to talk about at home?
Yeah.
What communication skills or what's missing for you to have these tough conversations? And sometimes that connection that needed to have been there from day dot. It's a skill that keeps getting scaffolded and built up over time. So if you've maybe been a busy parent or not as present or as available, maybe this is going to take a little bit of extra work and you're not going to just get the results that you want straight away. So often no one's getting in trouble, but usually the work is helping the parents find different ways to talk about those things so they can feel, I want them to not need me.
Yes.
I don't want to be a referee. I want to teach
exactly
what makes it hard to put in place a boundary, what makes it hard to say, I love you and I'm disappointed, or what makes it hard to enforce the home rules, or was there enough buy-in? Like, we can talk about those things, but I'm not punishment.
No. And then even if someone does need help and they really don't want it, there would be steps I would take with connection, with time, with doing things they like to try. And then I also think, opposite to what I've said, if it can reach a point where they really are in trouble and there really is professional help required, and it's a parent's responsibility to say, this isn't your choice anymore, we need to do this. But that's probably more on the extreme end, not the everyday.
Yeah. And you can still give choice in that. You can still say, this is more than I feel comfortable to manage. And just like I'm not a dentist, I wouldn't pull out your teeth, or I'm not a doctor to do these things. Or even if I was, maybe I wouldn't do it for family. We now need some additional support. I have found 3 people I think might be a good fit. Which one would you prefer? Or let's look together. Yeah, let's look together. There still can be choice in that. But as you were saying earlier about just being available and being present, I was thinking about how many people overestimate what connection means. Like, it doesn't always have to be big fun date nights or activities.
No.
A lot of people, like, they look for kind of mentorship. They're happy to learn a skill. It could be taking them with you to work and giving them some tasks to do. It could be like, I'm going to, we're painting the house. Why don't you come and paint a wall with me? It could be in sitting quietly while you're fishing. It could be, I don't know, teaching them groom a dog. Like, a lot of people want to feel important and connected, and they look up to adults. And so that doing something can then become a bit of a cue for when they need support. One of the dads I worked with, we talked about bids for connection, and he was like, my daughter came up to me at some ungodly hour, which she should have been in bed, and wanted to play Monopoly. And he's like, for goodness sakes, like the longest game ever, past bedtime. But he remembered the bid for connection. So he's like, I'm just going to say, yeah, let's play for a little bit. And while setting up the game and kind of dealing with the money and all that stuff, then she started to talk about some friendship issues. And so Monopoly's now become her way of being able to say, instead of saying, I want to talk, it's, can we play Monopoly? And so now that's become a bit of currency for that relationship of let's play Monopoly is a bit of a flag of either I want connection or I need to talk.
It's so beautiful.
And so that showed the importance of leaning into that as a yes. They still went to bed a bit later. But the thing was, had he said, no, it's ridiculous, it's too late, she would have still gone to bed upset, still been processing these friendship dramas and not have had support. So she still wouldn't have gone to sleep because she would have been dealing with all of this on her own.
It's so beautiful. It's how lucky that he just said yes that time.
Yeah.
It's that parent's natural, kind of instinctual intuition sometimes. I often think, even though we might sometimes do parenting or work in this way, parents are the experts of their own children.
Yeah. And sometimes it's confronting because in order for them to learn something, you might need to step back.
Yeah.
So it's finding this balance of reflection and wisdom and taking the bits that feel like they match your family.
Yeah.
While at the same time, we do have a heap of evidence that certain strategies don't work. And so it's looking at that from reputable sources, I suppose.
Yeah, which is not social media necessarily.
No. Do you have some go-to resources, books, podcasts that you recommend for families? If they're listening, they're like, oh, I could kind of brush up on some of this or kind of hear some other stories.
I'm a little bit more old-fashioned, but there's one book I absolutely love. It's called Everyday Parent. And I think I should know the name exactly off the top of my head. Give me 1 second. It's, I think, by Matthew Sanders. Have you heard of him?
No.
Matthew Sanders. It's a very old book that I love and recommend a lot for parenting.
Great. I have Hold On to Your Children by Gabor Mate is quite a good one.
I'd like to read that.
And it's Bill Garvey. He's a pediatrician from Melbourne. He's got the book 10 Things I Wish You Knew About Your Child's Mental Health. And I think it's a really accessible one. And he hosts the podcast Pop Culture Parenting. So some good ones there that I think would be quite helpful.
That book's recently come out, right?
Yeah, it's really
I need
good.
to read it.
I listened to the audiobook and he reads it, and so it's nice to just get a bit of insight into his vibe as well.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Hopefully this has given people a little bit of insight into what's happening for the young ones we support, maybe tips that they can try to do better, and maybe everyone's going to go out and buy a Monopoly board and just leave it there and hope for the best.
Every night. And that's a really important word you said. I think we always hold on to hope, but even if things haven't been great for the last few years with our young people, we hope and strive towards it getting better for them and for everyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage parents to say, they're like, well, how do I introduce this new? And I'd say to overt that, to say I listened to a podcast or I spoke to my therapist. Like, you're already normalizing learning as being a good thing and normalizing help seeking. And then say, it brought to my attention that I could try to do things different, or that maybe I've contributed to us feeling a little prickly or things being a little bit distant between us. And I want to try something new, and it could go wrong. It could be awkward. It might be really uncomfortable, but I want to try.
Exactly.
Because that's the role modeling that they need,
that we don't,
to be able to try hard things themselves.
Yes.
Because they can't be what they can't see. And so that role modeling, it needs to be there for them, not to be told, go seek help and do better. It's them witnessing you. I've gone to read something, listen to something, and I'm going to talk to you about trying to do better, which is confronting, right? It's a bit hard.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable and authentic, it's awkward.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
But they get to learn that you're imperfect too.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks so much, Jamie. When can people find you if they want to get in touch or work with you or talk to you or learn about you?
So I have a website, which is my name, jamiemaserow.com. Do I need to spell it out?
No, that's a bit much. Link in the show notes.
And then on social media, it was a hard one for me to accept that I needed to start a page, but I'm the therapist in therapy with dots in between. I actually have a book coming out in 2 weeks about my journey in therapy and being not perfect and the vulnerability coming out. So that's how I can be found.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening. To keep the conversation going, head on over to Instagram or LinkedIn and follow me. If you'd like to keep updated with episodes and other interesting things happening in mental health, join my weekly This Complex Life newsletter, where I'll share tools, tips and insights. There's a link in the show notes. Got a question you want answered? Shoot me an email or a DM. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating and a review. It helps other people find the podcast.